What is going on? How's everybody doing today? Hope everybody's having a good day so far. Hope everybody's had a good week so far. We're going to be talking about some Oregon football today because seems like Dan Lanning is going to be pretty active in the transfer portal again. I expect Oregon to really hit the transfer portal pretty heavily because we know Dan Lanning to do that. One of the positions is looking like it's going to be quarterback because yes, there are a lot of rumors and speculation about Dante Moore maybe returning to school. As of right now, if the NFL draft order stays around the same like it is right now, we have 3 more weeks in the NFL. We'll know the exact draft order. Seems like Dante Moore is going to be a top 2 to 3 pick, maybe even number one. Maybe Dante Moore ends up being the number one overall pick. Right now, it seems like it'll probably be Fernando Mendoza. I think it depends on which team gets to pick first, but it does seem like Dante Moore will be a top 3 pick at least. I think if you're a top 3 pick, I think you just go pro. I think you have to go pro, and that's what I think Dante Moore will do. So if Dante Moore leaves, you're stuck with a decision. If you're Dan Lanning, so you have Austin Novosad on the bench. He's learned behind Dan, or not Dan Lanning, but he's learned behind Dante Moore this year. He's obviously Dan Lanning's the guy that brought him in. Dan Lanning obviously likes him because he brought him in, made a pretty heavy push for him in the recruiting classes, and you got him in. But do you start him yet? Does Dan Lanning feel comfortable enough to start him quite yet? I don't know. I don't know quite yet. Because there are some big names in the transfer portal and some very good ones. And like I said, we know Dan Lanning to hit the transfer portal for quarterbacks. He did it with Dylan Gabriel. We saw Dante Moore come from the transfer portal. Although he did sit a year, he definitely did sit a year. I do have some speculation with one of these. Don't know how much truth could be to it because it's just pure speculation, but I'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, I do think Dan Lanning will be pretty active in the transfer portal. Quarterback's probably one of the top positions. And like I said, I don't know if Dan Lanning is quite ready to start Austin Novosad yet. I think you do like him. I've heard good things about him throughout the season. It's just tough to throw in a kid to start quite yet. He's a bigger quarterback, 6'3", 200 pounds. Actually, pretty light. He's actually a pretty light quarterback, to be honest, but pretty tall. Anyways, he's a true sophomore. He was a four-star recruit, number 13 quarterback in the country in his recruiting class, number 30 player in Texas, number 157th player nationally. I don't know. I don't know what Dan Lanning does. Because, like I said, I've heard good things about Austin Novosad. Oregon fans might know more than what I know about him. So, if you do know more about Austin Novosad and you're an Oregon fan watching this, I'd love to know in the comments. So, please drop a comment and let me know who you want to be your quarterback moving forward for next year. Because Oregon sets a pretty high standard at quarterback, and we've seen that over the last few years, really. So, the next one that I'm going to talk about, I got an ad pop up, is Dylan Raiola. So, we've heard that Dylan Raiola has actually reached out to Oregon about playing there. Thing is, we haven't heard if Oregon is interested in bringing Dylan Raiola in. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Dylan Raiola was a former 5-star quarterback. I know it says 4-star, but I believe he was a 5-star and he got bumped down. Oh, yeah, yeah. 24/7 Sports, 5-star. As a transfer, he's a 4-star. I'm sorry, so I was right. But anyways, Dylan Raiola uh, played at Buford. You do have some issues here because he's transferred, I think, every single year in his football career outside of his freshman year at Nebraska. He did play 2 seasons at Nebraska. Other than that, I believe he was at a different high school every year. He's in the transfer portal, which we kind of expected. Not that mobile, 6'3", 230. Yeah, I do think he gets a lot more hate than what he should because of the Patrick Mahomes comparisons and how he tries to act like Patrick Mahomes, or that's at least how it seems. I don't know how much of that's true and how much of it's not, but it's kind of hard to deny. I can't lie, it's pretty hard to deny. But anyways, back to the actual quarterback side. I think it's going to be tough for Dan Lanning to pass on Dylan Raiola because we've seen how much Dan Lanning elevates these quarterbacks because he brings in good staff. Dan Lanning knows how to bring in good offensive staff. And that's one good thing about him is he's always going to have good staff and personnel. So I believe that Oregon's still going to have a great offensive coordinator that's going to be able to develop these quarterbacks because you sat and learned behind Will Stein for several years. And Will Stein's now at Kentucky, but he was a big reason that a lot of these quarterbacks developed. I think Oregon is also just a very great spot. Dylan Raiola, you see the potential in his game. It's been up and down at Nebraska. To be fair, he's played behind a very bad offensive line his whole career there. If you go to Oregon, you'll have explosive wide receivers to throw to. You'll have a better offensive line. You'll have a good, reliable defense on the other side of the ball. I think Dylan Raiola could come in and win you some games. I think he fits the Oregon system much better than he fits the Nebraska system. I didn't like the fit in the Nebraska system. I think the way that Matt Rule has that Nebraska system is you got to have more of a mobile quarterback. Dylan Raiola is not a mobile quarterback, I would say. Some people did label him more of a mobile quarterback coming out of high school. I just didn't see it. I just didn't see it. I think he's a little too slow to be a mobile quarterback. But Oregon's offense, where you could sit back and really deliver to these explosive receivers and not really have to force yourself to make too many crazy plays, I think Dylan Raiola could potentially thrive in there. Now, another thing is here's what I'm thinking. So if Austin Novosad doesn't start, he's probably going to hit the transfer portal, I would guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my prediction. Here's another quarterback that I really like. If Austin Novosad leaves, I'll get to that point in a second. Is Sam Levitt. Sam Levitt's probably the hottest name in the transfer portal, especially at the quarterback position. So I see a lot of like Jackson Dart type of vibes there, like play style wise. I do think Sam Levitt will probably end up at LSU if I had to make an early guess. I wouldn't count Oregon out quite yet. I think Oregon is a team to watch here. I think Dan Lanning could turn this kid into an absolute superstar because he really kind of already is, in my opinion. We saw Sam Levitt take Arizona State to the college football playoffs, almost upset Texas. He dealt with some injuries this past year, had a lot of first round draft buzz, and like I said, the injuries just kind of held him back. He didn't have a full season, but in the time that he did play, he looked amazing still. He's a gamer. This kid plays with no fear. Like I said, kind of like the Jackson Dart type of mold. He can sit back and he can deliver. He can run the ball if he needs to, use his legs. I really love the fit in the Oregon offense as well. I think he could bring some more dynamic play to the offense. And when you surround him with these explosive wide receivers such as Evan Stewart and some of these other guys, you might be cooking with Sam Levitt. If you land Sam Levitt in the transfer portal, I would not be surprised if you're like top 2 to 3 teams as the favorite to win the national championship next year. I think Sam Levitt is that much of a difference maker, especially when you get him with a guy like Dan Lanning, who, like I said, brings in the right personnel who can develop quarterbacks. I think that's big for Dan Lanning's coaching careers. You see quarterbacks develop under his coaching staff. Sam Levitt is a guy that I would absolutely love to watch at Oregon. Now, here's my theory. Dylan Raiola, you can kind of take the Dante Moore route. Because if you do it, you got to do it at Oregon, I think. Dante Moore transferred after he started his freshman year at UCLA. Transferred to Oregon, sat a year, learned behind Dylan Gabriel. Could you maybe bring in Dylan Raiola to learn behind whoever is your quarterback next year and really let him develop and learn this offense and then just have a breakout year next year? I don't know. I don't think it's on the table. I think Dylan Raiola definitely wants to go somewhere and start off the bat. But I think it'd be very interesting. Something interesting to think about. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about is DJ Lagway. So, DJ Lagway did get recruited pretty heavily by Dan Lanning. Oregon was one of his top schools, I believe, in his recruiting cycle outside of Florida. And I think Baylor was pretty heavily involved there, which I think DJ Lagway might end up at Baylor. It seems like right now. That's my guess. But like I said, Dan Lanning was very interested in him, recruited him pretty heavily. Maybe it was Will Stein, but Dan Lanning definitely had something to do with it as well. DJ Lagway is a guy you didn't really see much from him. You had high expectations, didn't really pan out at Florida. Maybe the fit was a little bit weird. I don't know. Maybe he got let down by coaching, which I think a lot of people would definitely agree with. You know, but he's now in the transfer portal and he's looking for a new home. He's a guy you look at. You see all the flashes, you also see the downside. But if you're a good coach with good offensive personnel, this is a guy who I think you look at as a former 5-star quarterback and say, I could fix this guy. And if you fix him, there's potential there to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And he's looked very bad at Florida. Don't get me wrong, he's looked very bad at Florida. He's fixable. In my opinion, he's fixable. He needs a change of scenery. I think he could thrive at Oregon. I really do think he could thrive at Oregon. He was the number one quarterback in his class for a reason. That's all I'll say. I think put him with Dan Lanning and his offensive personnel, you can really get something really good out of DJ Lagway. That's my opinion. Now, that is the four targets I have for Oregon as of right now. Some things will change. There are a few more guys who are going to be hitting the portal, a few more guys that have hit the portal, but I don't know how much interest there is there yet, such as like Josh Hoover and some other guys. But these are my four that I like for Oregon. So if you're an Oregon fan, let me know in the comments what you want and what you think. Give me your opinions on this whole quarterback thing. Also, let me know if you think Dante Moore is leaving or staying. So if you did enjoy this video, then I would greatly appreciate if you dropped a subscribe. I've been getting a lot of support lately, and I'm going to be doing a lot of Oregon content because I love watching this Oregon team. I'm not going to lie. Oregon is one of the more fun programs in the country to watch, in my opinion. So I do watch a lot of Oregon. So I'll be doing a lot of Oregon breakdowns, staff-wise, transfer portal-wise, quarterback-wise, everything. So if you do enjoy that and you're an Oregon fan, stay tuned for those. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.